Have you ever just stopped and wondered, what is a thought? I don't mean philosophically. I mean, what is it physically? Well, we're about to go right inside your head to see how billions of simple, tiny cells work together to create something as incredible as consciousness itself.
So let's start with what's happening in your brain literally this very second. As you're listening to my voice, as you're processing these words, what's actually going on in there? What is a thought? Not as some poetic idea, but as a real biological event. That's the huge mystery we're going to unpack today.
And believe me, it is a huge mystery. You could say it's one of the biggest challenges in all of neuroscience, right? How do you connect the microscopic world of individual brain cells to the magnificent macro-level experience of, being you? I mean, think about it. On one hand, you have the neuron, this physical thing we can literally see under a microscope. And on the other, you have the mind, this thing we experience every moment of our lives. The gap between them just feels vast. So how do scientists even begin to build a bridge across that gap? Well, they use models, specifically computational models. These are like blueprints that try to connect the physical firing of brain cells to actual observable behavior. And it turns out, building that entire bridge, that whole connection, it all starts with one single foundational principle. It's incredibly elegant, and it was first proposed by the psychologist Donald O. Hebb way back in 1949.
And this is it. This is the simple rule that changes everything. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Just let that sink in for a second. This one idea is really the bedrock of how our brains learn, how we remember, and ultimately how we think. It sounds so simple, right? But it is unbelievably powerful.
Now, the official scientific term for this is Hebbian plasticity, and all it means is that every single time two neurons are active at the same moment, the little connection between them, it's called a synapse, it just gets a little bit stronger. This is it. This is the physical basis for learning and memory, right down at the cellular level.
So here's how it works. It's pretty straightforward. First, imagine two neurons just firing at random. The connection between them is super weak, almost non-existent. But then, maybe an experience causes them to fire in sync, over and over again. Think about the smell of coffee and the sight of your kitchen every single morning. The more they fire together, the stronger that link becomes, until eventually they are functionally wired together.
Okay, so what happens when you take that simple process and you repeat it millions, even billions of times all over the brain? Well, you get entire teams of neurons that are now super likely to fire together, and this creates these persistent, almost echoing patterns of activity. And this single idea is so important. It's really two sides of the same coin. In neuropsychology, they call these echoing patterns reverberations. But in those computational models we talked about, they're called attractors. It's just two different labels for the same incredibly powerful concept.
Oh, I love this analogy. It makes it so clear. Think of an attractor like a valley in a landscape. The brain's electrical activity is like a marble rolling across that landscape. Well, what's going to happen? That marble is naturally going to fall into one of the valleys and eventually come to rest. That stable, settled, resting state, that is the attractor.
So, okay, why does this matter? Why are we talking about marbles and valleys? Because these attractors are doing all the heavy lifting of our cognition. They are the basis of our memory systems, they're what let you hold a phone number in your head for a few seconds, and most importantly, scientists believe these attractors are the physical representation of stable cognitive states. In other words, they are a thought. And this brings us to the really exciting part, because scientists aren't just talking about this in the abstract. No, they are actually building functional models based on these exact principles to see if they can replicate what the brain really does. And get this, different types of these attractor models can explain totally different brain functions. So you've got continuous attractor networks, which are great at explaining how we recognize an object or find our way around a room. And then you have Hopfield networks, which beautifully model associative memory. Like how a single scent can suddenly bring back this entire flood of childhood memories. It's amazing. And here's the best part. These aren't just some neat ideas on a whiteboard. These so-called toy models can actually reproduce the exact results that we see in real-world lab experiments with actual neurons, like the famous work done by Miyashita. And that tells us something huge. It tells us we are absolutely on the right track. The models are reflecting reality. So, let's bring it all home. We started this whole journey with just a single neuron and one simple rule. And now we've traveled all the way up to the actual machinery of cognition. And this, really, is the profound conclusion.
The staggering, mind-boggling complexity of the human mind, our ability to write poetry, to solve equations, to feel love, it all emerges from this one simple principle: fire together, wire together. Just repeated across billions and billions of neurons. It's just a beautiful example of emergent complexity.
So here it is, the ultimate takeaway. A thought isn't a thing. It's not an object, it's a pattern. It is a vast network of your neurons settling into a stable state, into an attractor. And that pattern, that is the bridge between the biological hardware of your brain and the incredible software of your mind.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of mind-bending question to chew on. If a thought is simply your brain's activity settling into one of these stable valleys, one of these attractors, what is physically happening when you change your mind? What does it actually take to knock that marble out of its comfortable valley and into a brand new one? Leaves you wondering, doesn't it?